John, Benjamin Hickey on Manhattan for WGN. We talked to your boss, Sam Shaw, a couple of weeks ago, so we've got kind of the lowdown on the show itself. But I want to know, what brought you to this project? I mean, WGN was not, they're kind of in the same situation that AMC was a few years ago and not having original programming. So was that scary for you to take that role on for an unknown quantity like that?
You know, it's a great question, Chris, and I have to say, in a word, you know, especially when you phrase it along with you know, AMC did the same thing, because things worked out pretty well for AMC. You know, the television is a lot like the Wild West these days, and if you see a piece of land, a territory where there looks like the land is fertile, you know, to extend that metaphor, you go for it. And as an actor, you know, I go where I try my best, if I'm fortunate enough, to go where the great work is. And this script was so extraordinary and so different from anything else I'd read, and so challenging that, quite frankly, I didn't care where it was. You know, the fact that it was a new network, I didn't really think that much about, because it was all about what was on the page. You know, it was all about that part and that world that Sam had created.
I'm like you. I mean, years ago, it did matter where you were going to go mattered way more than it does now. I think now people will find a good product.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I certainly think they do, and we have a very, very devoted audience, and they looked for the WGN. They found it. You know, it's also available on Hulu Plus and iTunes. There are so many different ways for people to see their stuff now, and you know, the whole thing about binge watching, and so it just shifts so much, and there is so much great stuff to see that you find a way to see it. You find a way to see it. So the fact that it's on a network that had been sort of tested in the waters of original programming, to me was also exciting. And frankly, you know, it wasn't a pilot episode. They bought the thing for 13 episodes, so I had the opportunity of going full out, you know, for 13 hours with this guy, which was also incredibly attractive.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. I wanted to ask you today, to me, there's really, in terms of widespread acting roles, there's really three types. One, and you've done all three. One, a play where you get to portray the same person day after day after day after day, and I guess uncover more and more layers, but doing the same product day after day.
Yeah.
And then movies where you get, you know, whether it's a TV movie or a miniseries or a theatrical film, it's a one-shot deal. You've got to make this character believable and real over a 2-hour period. Yep. And then a TV series where you get to explore a character for, you know, like you said, 13 episodes or maybe you know, 6 or 7 years. Talk about, because you've done all three, talk about the difference from one to the other.
It's an extraordinary and huge difference, because, you know, in the theater you are in control of the narrative. I mean, a playwright has written that story. You're not the author of it, but you are in some ways the author of that experience night after night in the theater. And you have in your conscious and unconscious a beginning, middle, and end. You know where you're beginning, and you know exactly where you're going to end up. You know, you may not get there as on Wednesday night as well as you did on Tuesday night. So there's that variable in the theater. You know, you never know when you're going to have a great night. You never know when you're going to be off your game. But
along those lines, do you find that character and your performance evolving from, say, the first week to the last week?
Yeah, I mean, the theater, you know, enormous skill comes into play, because you're doing it 8 times a week, and your job is to make it seem like it's happening for the first time. And, you know, let's face it, you get into a run, especially a Broadway run that can be a long run, and there can be weeks that go by when you don't feel the muse, you know, you don't feel a certain amount of inspiration, and then you can walk in on a Wednesday afternoon slightly hungover from the night before and have the best show of your entire run, and you don't know why. So, you know, it's showing up with all of your skill intact and hoping for inspiration. But if that inspiration doesn't come, you still have to, you know, find your mojo. In television, the extraordinary thing is that you don't know what the middle or the end is. And Sam and Tommy Schlamme, our brilliant showrunner, and Sam, of course, who created it, they wouldn't tell us. They kind of purposefully kept some stuff from us because they wanted to peel the onion themselves. And I think that's really exciting in television, that week by week you open a script and you read it and you're like, oh my God, that's who I am this week. That's how different I am. And I thought he was this guy, but he's actually this guy. And so keeping that sort of open-ended. There's a great story about Casablanca, you know, that Bogey and Bergman didn't know what the middle or the end of that script was. And there's a lot of people who say one of the reasons her performance pops off the screen so much, I mean, she was a great actress and a great beauty, is because it was filled with anxiety, because she didn't know which guy she was going to choose. And I think that's kind of extraordinary. You know, I don't think actors should be kept in the dark, but there's something beautiful about not knowing where you're going to end up on your journey.
And then theatrical role, you know, not theatrical Broadway, but film role is kind of, I guess, in between, because you've got to get everything you want to do done for that 2-hour movie.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's true for television and film, but in television, especially if you're lucky enough to be on something that keeps going, that runs more than a season or two, and a movie is all about like keeping yourself from driving yourself crazy from second guessing. Because in the theater, if you don't have a great night on Tuesday night, you get to do it twice on Wednesday to kind of like, you know, correct your mistakes, as it were. In film, you know, you shoot a few pages a day, and when you're on your way home that night, you're like, well, I certainly hope they got it, and I hope I was able to tell the story I wanted to tell with my character, because I don't get to go back and do that again. So it's very, you know, talk about being alive to the possibility of the moment. You really have to let go of control and just give yourself over to the moment, because it's over that day and you're on to new stuff the next day.
Let's talk about Frank here on Manhattan, your character. Boy, what a complex guy. I mean, that's got to be, I mean, when you get a script that rich, you just got to be salivating over that.
Yeah, man. It's he was a complicated son of a bitch. I miss him. We've been on hiatus for a few months now, and I think about him so much. You know, he's a brilliant theoretical nuclear physicist. Now I'm a lot of things, but a nuclear physicist I am not. And you know, I think one of the things that happens with actors and acting is the less you understand about what that person does, the more you consciously and unconsciously concentrate on who they are and emotionally what makes them do what they do, you know. And look, let's face it, most of us are actors because we weren't paying attention in physics class in high school. It wasn't what we were interested in. So trying to understand Frank and why he is so driven and so and you know, so uncompromising and willing to compartmentalize as much as he does, it was fascinating to be able to try and pry that guy's heart and mind open.
One of my favorite things about the show, well, I want to talk about a couple of things, but one is your relationship with your, I guess, former mentor. Now you're becoming more of the teacher yourself, and that is with Daniel Stern's character.
Yeah, Glenn Babbitt, and played by one of my favorite actors, and has been for 30 years, ever since I saw him in Breaking Away, Daniel Stern. Yeah, it's like Frank sees himself in a position of having to, take control and run things, and I don't necessarily think he wants to be a leader. He just wants to get the job done, and he sometimes has to take positions of authority with people like Glenn, who he always saw as the authoritative one. They've always had this kind of avuncular relationship with each other, and now Frank's bedside manner, even with his former mentor and the man he trusts more than any other man in the world and loves him, the relationship's compromised because I think Frank has to be a merciless leader, you know, and his bedside manner is not great. But I think that's one of the things that makes him really, really fascinating. You know, I also think I think Glenn understands Frank because they're men of a certain age, and these are men who have lived through 2 wars. You know, Frank was a soldier in the Great War, in the First World War, supposed to have ended all wars, and now finds himself back at it. And I think that's put him in a moral, you know, conundrum that makes for great complication and incredible dynamics between other characters.
The other relationship that I have with the show that I think everybody does, and there's another character, and that is this town they've built for you. Talk about working within that town and how that informs you as an actor.
Yeah, you know, for people who don't know, one of the extraordinary things about the verisimilitude of this show and getting to work on it is University of Santa Fe Art and Design gave our production 10 acres of these outbuildings that had been built in the 1950s as like I think it was maybe a burn hospital or something extraordinary, and they'd just been sitting empty for many, many years, and they were easily able to convert them into the labs of Los Alamos. So we have 10 acres of back lot. It's like being in a movie in the 1940s on the back lot of MGM. I expect Mickey and Judy to come out any second. And so when you do a walk and talk outside, you go inside and you don't have to cut. You know, usually when you're on a television show, you do an exterior, and then 5 days later, you open that door and you've come onto a sound stage. We didn't have those. Everything was real. So it just added to a sense of being in that time and place, because this was a secret suburb, a government-sanctioned secret suburb that was built for these people to live in. Nobody else could see or hear or be told about. And that's what it feels like for us as actors, to be in this tiny little, you know, space in the back of this that nobody knows is there. Nobody from town knows that we're in there and have created this world circa 1944. So it feels a little bit like a Twilight Zone episode, in a good way.
But I bet you know the original people, the characters that you're all playing, probably felt the same way.
Absolutely. I think they felt like they were on the moon. I mean, if you think about it, you had a lot of people from academia, really brilliant, scientific minds who had been pulled from all the great academic institutions across America. You also had a lot of Eastern Europeans who were living in the States. This is one of the reasons why the Germans didn't get their hands on a bomb, is because they didn't have the brain power, because so many people had defected, had left Germany to get away from Hitler. So we had them, which is, an extraordinary irony when you think about it. So all of these people who had lived in cultured society, being in academia, were suddenly in this tiny little desert mesa town with barbed wire fences around it, unable to talk to each other about what they were doing with all that, during the day. And I think it made for a little bit of lunacy, and made for very heightened emotional and psychological lives. I think it's about men building something that creates an atomic chain reaction. And I think putting those people in that town created a chain reaction in and of itself, So I think there's a terrific kind of parallel between what they're building and what's happening to them in their lives there.
Well, as award season is coming up with Golden Globes and SAG Awards, I know you've gotten a chance to already have a conversation with a lot of the Hollywood Foreign Press members. What were they saying? One thing I think, reason I've got you in my predictions of the show, is that Globe voters have proven over the years they love historical dramas and they love brand new shows. They love to be the first to embrace a new show because they're kind of first in the cycle too, long before the Emmy Awards next summer. So tell me just about talking with them and what you're hearing about the reaction to the show itself.
Well, it's terribly exciting. First and foremost, this attention from them has been so wonderful, and it's very good for the show because we are coming back next season and we want people to watch it, and so that's all just on a pure business level great. But artistically, when I met with the people of the Hollywood Foreign Press, they're a really extraordinarily eclectic group of people from all over the world, and their knowledge of this particular piece of American history, which is of course a piece of world history, because this was the birthplace of the world that we know now. I mean, everything that we know now as far as atomic energy and, you know, sadly, atomic weaponry was born in this little place. So people from all over the world know about it, and I found the HFPA so articulate and curious, specific little place in America, and so knowledgeable about it. I mean, when I did my Q&A with them, I was so grateful that I had Sam Shaw there with me, because there were some of the questions were like, I'm going to pass this to the smarter guy to the left of me.
Well, in lots of walks of life, sometimes people from overseas know more about American history than we do.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they have such a curiosity about it, and so open-minded about it. And you know, one of the extraordinary gifts of getting to be an actor job like this is you get to go back to school. You know, so stuff that you may not have been paying too much attention to in high school in the 1970s because you've been, you know, doing bad things at lunch or something, you know, whatever. You were, you know, I was a kid, and now as a grown-up, to be able to go back and immerse myself in this extraordinary moment in world history has really been a gift.
Well, we're running out of time, but I've got so many more questions. I want to just rush through them real quick.
Okay, let's do it. Keep my
All Heart, you win the Tony Award in 2011. And then Ryan Murphy does the movie that aired this past season. What did you think about the movie, and were you sad you didn't get to reprise your role?
No, you know, my experience doing the play was such a brilliant moment in time for me that I would not trade for anything, and I was fully satisfied by it. I was not sad that I was not in the movie, and because I loved those actors so much. I even told Matt Bomer, you know, when I watched it, I was apprehensive and filled with a benign envy, but I thought Matt was absolutely extraordinary and heartbreaking, and was completely different, you know. Look, any actor who gets to be in that play knows how fortunate they are, because it's such an extraordinary piece of work, and I thought all of those actors across the board were knocked it out of the park.
Well, maybe somehow we can get the Manhattan table next to the normal Heart table at the Globes in a few weeks.
That would be fun. I love living in a world, too, where I could play the same part as Matt Bomer. You know, he's so brilliant, and young, and handsome. I just think he's the best.
And another award, before you got your Emmy nomination last summer, you talked with our editor, Daniel Montgomery, coming off of the Big C wrap-up, and I believe we all were telling you, hey, you know, Laura's going to get in, you're going to get in, and sure enough, you did. Tell us about your Emmy Award night.
Oh, my gosh, it was so much fun, and then Laura won, and that was so exciting.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. She could be there. When did you get a chance to talk with her after that?
Well, she was not there because she was very, very, very pregnant at the time. Although I don't think anybody knew it back then, but they know now because she has a beautiful baby boy. She was so sorry that she couldn't be there, and so thrilled for the show. And that was the last season of that show. It was the most important season because it was a season where Laura's character dies, and you know, it was an extraordinary balance of comedy and drama, and those writers did such a great job bringing it to life, Darlene Hunt and Jenny Bix. And to be able to end it like that with that celebration, and look, actors always say this, it was such a surprise and such an honor just to be nominated. But I really felt that way. I mean, our little show was always maybe a tiny bit under the radar, so to get that Emmy love was pretty great. It was really, really, really great honor.
Yeah, the Emmys love her. I think, and my numbers may be off by one here, but I think that was her 5th nomination and her 4th win. So she's won a lot of them.
I remember a reporter once said, Laura Linney, a noun we can all agree upon. And I think that's a perfect way to describe Laura. Who doesn't?
And speaking of a cast, you've got a bunch of no-names here in this movie, Truth, you're working on. Robert Redford, Kate Blanchett, Elizabeth Moss, Dennis Quaid. You're kind of carrying that load, aren't you?
No, man. There's a saying in the South that you know, but I can't repeat it. It's blanking and high cotton. And that's exactly what I was doing in Sydney, Australia. Talk about an honor getting to play Kate Blanchett's husband. You know, I'm just a huge fan. And most of the time I spent just trying my best not to be starstruck by her. But she's such an incredible pro and brilliant, brilliant actress. And Redford was coming in the day after I left. So, of course, my joke with the crew was the only man who could possibly come in and replace me in your affections would be none other than Robert Redford. I'm so sorry I didn't get to meet him because he's one of my favorite actors of all time and such a hero to me. And this is an extraordinary part for him. He's playing Dan Rather in this extraordinary story about CBS Evening News and Rather's retirement and the story they ran. And when you read the script, there are these marvelous echoes of all the President's Men, because Redford is in a way a journalistic icon as well as Dan Rather is because of our association with him in our film consciousness. It's great. I think it's going to be a fantastic movie. Brilliant director Jamie Vanderbilt who wrote it. Very exciting.
And what's the timeline for that? When will that be out? Do you know?
I would imagine it would be probably next fall as these things go.
Those prime award slot fall kind of movies.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, but I'm just an actor. You got to ask something more than me.
It sounds to me, based on the timing that I was reading, that's probably about right. They'll have it edited in plenty of time for that.
Yeah, I would think so. But it's a brilliant script. And Lizzie Moss, I'm just the biggest fan of hers, and Quaid and Race. It's a really great group of people.
And let's break a little news here. One of your favorite roles and one of the fan favorite recurring roles on The Good Wife is your character, who has been off for a long time because you've been in New Mexico and very, very busy. But you're shooting an episode that's going to air probably maybe in January timeframe.
So yeah, we're shooting it right now. I just started this morning. And I'm so happy to be back. I think the last one I did was that extraordinary episode last season, Hitting the Fan, where Juliana's character gets fired and they all find out she's been, two-timing. I'm so happy to be back. I love that group of actors so much. I think Juliana is one of the greatest number ones on the call sheet in the history of television. And those guys, how about the fact that they're in their, sixth season now? Is that what it is?
That's right.
And the show has never been better. I mean, I just think my hat is so off to those writers, and I'm honored to be on it because they write so beautifully for me. And I'm so happy to be Neil Gross again. He's such a, he and Frank Winter share a kind of prickliness in common. And let's just say that no spoiler alerts, but Neil's pretty pissed off. He's pretty pissed off at things are going at the new firm.
Yeah, with that show, you have to be very careful with spoilers because things happen so abruptly and so fast on that show.
You do. I read the script and I can't tell anybody about it. Nobody, I'll say, I've got the new Good Wife script. Don't tell me anything. Don't tell me anything. It's fantastic.
And a little trivia thing about Good Wife. 5 seasons in a row, they've won an acting award at the Emmys. That rare. Most of the time, when a show gets about the 5th, 6th season, it's starting to peter off. It's slowing down in terms of quality. Maybe even a lot of cast members are gone, writers are gone. But Juliana, Archie Panjabi, Carrie Preston, who am I leaving out? Martha Plimpton, and then Juliana won again this past year.
Unbelievable. That's so great. And I'm so proud to count myself among the people they get for guest stars on that show. It's like David Hyde Pierce is doing it now, and Nathan Lane, Stephen Pasquale. It's every time you go in, there's just Juliana says all the time. She just sits there and looks at whoever she's working with that week and says, "I can't believe how lucky I am. I can't believe it." And look, I love LA and I live in LA a lot of the time, but that's really the great thing about shooting that show in New York City is you get to call from some of the greatest, actors working today.
Well, it's the who's who of Broadway. Really, they've got their because they're one of the few New York shows. They could
Yeah,
just call on anybody they want. Law and Order used to be that way.
absolutely. And when I was first starting out, it was not. I was pre-Law and Order. It was the Equalizer. And that was
Okay.
my first job. My line was, "What the hell's going on here?" And I said it to Stanley Tucci. That was the. And then the Law and Orders came along, and for the longest time, that was the only game in town. Those Law and Orders, you know. But now, again, like we're going back to what I said before about this golden age of television. There's just so much out there to choose from. You know, it's very fortunate time to get to be an actor.
Well, last question. Speaking of Broadway, is there any way in your schedule to work it out where you get back there?
You know, there's a new play that I want to do, hopefully at Lincoln Center. I know everyone's talking about it, but you never know how these things work out. But depending on my shooting schedule for next season, I would like to do it after that. And, you know, you get very spoiled by a play like The Normal Heart, you know? I mean, it's not only, you know, just an extraordinary workout for an actor. You get to do everything in it. It's just a great play, a play that's so easy to believe in and wrap your heart and your mind around. So waiting around for a play as good as this is a dangerous thing because you may never work again. But I found a great play, and I'm always doing readings, and you know, I certainly hope, because boy, I've been going to see a lot of theater. And that I mentioned that term earlier, benign envy. You know, you see a great show and you're just filled with that feeling of like, oh, I want to be up there so bad, you know, let me up there. So hopefully soon.
Well, I hope so. When you're in a situation like you and so busy all the time, you've got to do what like Hugh Jackman's doing now, which is you do a limited. You have to do something that's got a start point and an end point that's like what 13 weeks, 15 weeks, something like that.
But you know, I admire him so much, and you know, the thing is people think, oh, in between my movies, I'm gonna put a play in. I don't know Mr. Jackman, but I would think he thinks I'm gonna do movies on the other side of my play, because no matter if it's 13 weeks or a year or 6 weeks, it's such incredibly hard work and requires such unbelievable focus. You know, that for him to be able to come off of one thing and throw himself into this, Jez Butterworth, what a great playwright he is. It's, you know, it's the opposite of a folly. You know, it takes a lot of blood, sweat, tears.
Well, that's the thing about, I mean, I've heard so many actors, directors over the years that are very successful talk about whether it's a indie film or whether it's a play or something. Those are the passion projects. You go off and make your money on things maybe you don't even like, maybe they're a popcorn movie or something, and then you take that money and live off that money and work for free basically on a play or maybe an indie film.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think most people would agree with me who've done a lot of theater, you know, and especially, you know, if you're in a hit Broadway play, it's like being at the epicenter of the universe. You know, it's like you are at the core of what we all do, and it's just such an incredible sense of community, and it's happening right then and there. You know, like we're talking about the movie with Kate and Robert Redford. You know, that movie will come out in a year from now, and so much time will have passed. But the play, boy, is all right there, right then. You know, you feel every bit of it, and that has its good and bad sides. You know, but yeah, there's nothing more, you know, that takes every fiber of your being as an actor than doing a play.
Well, John, really enjoyed our conversation today. Good luck with the awards coming up for Manhattan and Good Wife and all that kind of stuff. We really appreciate it.
I greatly appreciate you guys having me on, and I'll see you soon.